All right, welcome back to another podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. Today, I invited 3 guests on. We're going to do a transparent and honest review of Nucamp. And like always, let's actually just jump right into the intros. Crystal.
Hi, my name is Crystal Adelie, and I did the full stack bootcamp for Nucamp, started in October of 2019 and finished in April of 2020, so 6 months ago. My background is I have a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering and I have an MBA as well. And I did the bootcamp in order to learn coding skills so I can build my own applications.
That's really cool. You know, I started off interviewing a lot of people that went to coding boot camps, and they went to it because they wanted to become a software engineer, like a professional software engineer. And I've been meeting a lot of people that will just go to the coding boot camp to be able to build out their own idea and hopefully, you know, kind of make that successful and solve a real problem. So it's interesting. Okay, so I'll go left to right on my screen. I'm Don. I'm a software engineer. I've been a software engineer at 3 different companies. I love startups. That's just the feel I like. I like having the autonomy. I was a software engineer for 2 companies focusing on front end, and then moved into a full stack position for my 3rd one. In January, I quit to start my own company helping software engineers. So that's why you're seeing all these podcast episodes. And again, I always say this every episode. Thank you for the feedback. Everyone reaches out to me at least once a day. Well, not everyone. I get at least 1 comment a day. And because of your feedback, I'm going to continue doing these episodes. I'm actually going to up the episodes to 2 a week. So again, thank you. I think you're going to look forward to some of the upcoming episodes. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. How about you, Blaine?
My name is Blaine. I have an associate's degree in computer programming, and I also did the full stack JavaScript web development in Nucamp. When I first began coding, I learned PHP 7, and doing that, I quickly learned that I needed to know HTML and CSS. 3 years later, here I am adding features to a instant messaging application using React, Axios, and Firebase.
That's really cool. Nucamp doesn't teach PHP, right? It's a different backend?
No, I learned PHP in college.
Okay. All right. That's actually what I started out with.
Oof, it was a nightmare without HTML and CSS.
Yeah, it was a little tough. How about you, Jeremy?
I have an associate's degree as a software developer and a separate 45 credit certificate as a computer support specialist. So I've been trying to grow to a developer role. I've been working about 5 years doing hardware software support, but I found it's really hard to grow into that role. There's a lot of those jobs out there, but they don't convert easily. So I've been moving job to job there, getting raises each time. So eventually I thought I had a pretty stable job. I was working for a Fortune 10 company. So then I went to this boot camp. I thought I could roll into a developer position there, but they laid me off. They laid off all the contractors in May. So when this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is when I did get laid off, they didn't have one-on-one job coaching. And I knew that going into Nucamp. I was ready to do all that work on my own. They have a 6-week self-directed course after the 5-month boot camp. And I had also taken the 1-month boot camp as well. So once I did get laid off, I had met my friend. He had done QA. He said, hey, do QA for a while. You're doing some scripting anyways, and you can get into coding later on, just so you have a job during the coronavirus. So I decided to do that. It looked like a fast track. It did end up going all those classes. I ended up taking like 5 different classes. I'm finishing off 2 right now. It ended up being a little bit longer than I thought. But I did find a job, and my passion for coding hasn't ended. So once the last class finishes in January, the certification class for QA, then I'm going to get back into coding classes and get that group going.
Sounds good. And I'm glad you did find work during COVID.
Right. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are even struggling to find any work. So.
Right. Most people have told me that they were thinking it would be like 6 months to a year after you graduate before you get a job. So and that's just exacerbated with the COVID. So, I just didn't know how long it would take.
Well, I mean, that timeline is important. A lot of people underestimate it. And a lot of coding boot camps are still sticking with their current timelines pre-COVID. So I think you just gave a really realistic timeline.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let's dive into it. What do you guys think of the application process?
Super easy.
Super simple.
Yeah, straightforward.
What do you do to get
for me? For me, I remember taking a quiz. I think it was like 40 questions or something, just to see assess my skills, my coding skills. So before the boot camp, I pretty much had no skills apart from maybe one video on Khan Academy, which doesn't count. So I had no exposure to coding at all. So then based on the score of the quiz, they would see if you need to first take a web development fundamentals course or go ahead and jump into full stack. So I took the web development course for 4 weeks, and that was very necessary because without that, I wouldn't have known about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which is what you need to know before you start the bootcamp. So it was very straightforward and easy for me.
Was the pre-course, everyone talked about like a 1 month program. Was that the web fundamentals?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's 1 month, it's 4 weeks. Yep.
Okay.
So they have 3 programs. They have the 1 month web development fundamentals. They have a 4 month front end, and then a 5 month full stack.
Yep.
Beyond the web development fundamentals. So you have a month long and a separate 4 month/5 month. A lot of people just do the 4 months, do the front end. A lot of people want to learn the back end, so they do 1 more month.
So it's very front end focused.
Very front end focused, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, because most boot camps that I do reviews on, they're back end focused. I like this. This is interesting.
Interesting.
Okay.
No, I think it's the complete other way around. Most everything is front end as far as I perceived it.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
All right. Very cool. It sounds pretty easy to get in. So one thing that often comes up when that application process isn't stringent and they're not cautious about who they let in, sometimes you're paired with people that aren't really at your skill level, and you have a varied amount of skill levels that go into the coding boot camp. And typically what will happen is people with a lower skill level, they bring people with a higher skill level down just a little bit, because the course will usually slow down to catch those people up. That's very often what you're going to see in a lot of curriculums and a lot of education. Do you feel like that was ever a problem?
I didn't have that perception. I had taken a basic web programming class and an advanced web programming class at a community college in my area. I don't even remember an application process. You just pay the money. You look at the site. They say, hey, if you know JavaScript, HTML, CSS, you can just go into the full stack bootcamp. If you don't, you probably better take this course. I just wanted to take the 1 month on course. I already knew that stuff in general, and just get a feel for the flow of their program and decide if I fully want to invest my money. So I don't even remember from my side doing that portion. And then as far as like the other people, once, everybody was basic with the web development fundamentals course they're learning anyways. And then with the full stack, everybody basically knew what they were doing. They didn't, I felt from my viewpoint, just, you were real helpful. So I didn't perceive that. It was kind of an even flow for me, at least.
Okay. Do you guys feel the same way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Blaine, do you want to go?
No, you're fine. You're
Okay. I would say for me, I didn't perceive being slowed down, or maybe some other people feeling slowed down. But then again, I can be biased because I would say that my coding skills were on the beginner level. However, I think that having that program being a hybrid program where you learn a lot of the content from home, I think that can kind of help to help with the learning curve. So if you're not understanding something, you can get help during the week. You can bring yourself up to speed so that by the time you get to the weekend workshop, that you at least are on a level playing field and you understand as much as everyone else knows, versus everyone just learning the concept at the same time. and then being possibly slowed down. So that would be what I say for that.
That's a very good point.
Okay. So was this not a full-time program?
Part-time.
Part-time. I think it's directed towards working professionals, people who are working full-time and then part-time doing the boot camp. So you're not there for a 40-hour week. You do need to put in at least 20 hours, as far as for me at least, and 30 hours is what I was trying to do. And I felt even that actually wasn't enough. There's so much I wanted to learn, but it's such a huge ecosystem. And, 30 hours was, it was a lot of work, but, time management is a big thing with this. But, it's not full time, but you do have to put in the time on your own.
Okay.
I definitely treated it like it was full time, though, I'd say.
Did you? Okay. So maybe a little over 20 hours for some people.
How many hours were you guys putting in?
I was putting between 30 and 35, so
yeah,
I was
right on target.
Yeah, daggum near close to full time. Yeah,
yeah,
that's interesting. Well, I do think, so even some of the top coding boot camps in my area, a lot of them were really into I think the reputation came from having this full-time intensive coding bootcamp, and they taught you everything that you needed to know. And I think as our economy changes, as the world changes, as the industry changes, I think a lot of coding bootcamps are starting to consider a lot of part-time programs, even a lot of the ones that didn't before. And they relied on those intensive programs to keep their reputation high. And I do think that's important. So that's one of the things I did see on the website. I just like to ask this question. So people that are watching, if they don't know, it is focused on part-time. It is focused on professionals already kind of working.
Yeah, for working professionals, definitely.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think of the curriculum?
it was good. It was very fast paced, though.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What made you feel like it was fast paced?
Just each week was new content. Like, for instance, on the back end, we learned Mongo one day. The next day, we were already learning Mongoose, it's just like, wow, I don't even understand Mongo right now.
Right. Yeah.
How did they bridge that gap? Or how did they supplement your knowledge with Mongo if you weren't ready to learn, to branch off from it?
It would tell us to write some lines of code to set up a Mongo connection. Mm-hmm. And the next video would be like, all right, erase this. We're going to install Mongoose, and we're going to use Mongoose to connect to Mongo. I was like, whoa, this is new. And then started going into schemas and stuff like that, which after a while I ended up catching on, but sheesh, it was a lot.
They even had one class or one module where they said, okay, you're going to feel like you're in a black box here. You're not going to know what's going on. This is the mental attitude that we want you to approach this under. So we're going to be throwing out all this stuff as long as you have a bit of a handle on it. Just try to keep going, try to paddle, try to dog paddle here. And you should do just fine. But they even said that early in the course during the full stack portion that you're in a black box. You're not going to know what you're doing. Just keep plugging away and it should be fine.
I will say the portfolio projects after each course, those helped a lot. That's basically where I tied all the knots.
So that came at the end of the program.
It was you halfway through you would start planning, which I just did the same project but with different languages, and then at the end I did a full stack one. But I just basically we used outdated versions. So what I would do is I would install the newest version and try and learn it that way. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah.
Interesting. Before I forget, what was the stack that you guys learned?
So we learned Bootstrap. We learned React Native, Node.js, Express, and MongoDB, and then the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Okay, so did you just touch on Bootstrap, or did you focus more on, like, did you focus on custom CSS, or did you just kind of learn a little CSS and then move to Bootstrap?
Just Bootstrap.
Yeah,
as far as my class went.
Yeah, if you're doing the full stack, you just jumped right into Bootstrap, React Native, and then the back end. Now, if you take the web development fundament, because they're under the assumption that you already have a feeling for CSS, JavaScript, and HTML. But for me and Crystal, we were doing the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and there was no Bootstrap as far as I remember there during that month-long course.
Yeah, no, the web fundamental class does not have Bootstrap, but you do focus on Bootstrap during the front end portion of the full stack Bootcamp. So Bootstrap is a 4-week course, and I think we learned a little bit about custom CSS, but not much. So, and then React was, I think, another 4 weeks, and then React Native was 5 weeks. And then the back end, the Node Express Mongo, that was another 4 weeks. And then another part of the curriculum, they did mention Git, but it was optional. But I found that was helpful, even though it was optional, to learn that, because version control is super important. I would say my experience with the program or the curriculum is I just remember feeling like I was learning a lot of information, but it wasn't necessarily penetrating. It wasn't sticking for me. And I found that the reason why is because I did not have JavaScript fundamentals solid. So even though I had some exposure to JavaScript through the Web Fundamentals course and through the Bootcamp, because they would teach you some concepts like arrow functions and, array map methods, different things, but I still felt like this is not sticking with me. I'm not having an aha moment where it's like, I get it. And it wasn't until after the Bootcamp where I'm actually now taking a JavaScript fundamental course where I'm deep diving into JavaScript, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense now. It's like all coming full circle to me. So I would just say that there's only so much you're going to learn in 22 weeks. This is like nothing against Nucamp. It's just realistic that whatever they're teaching you, you need to supplement it. You can't just assume that they're going to learn everything. You need to make sure you have JavaScript fundamentals. So whether you're taking that in parallel or you do that beforehand, just make sure you do that, because that's going to make your life a lot easier, because these frameworks are based on JavaScript. So it's really hard to learn something and you don't know the basis for where did that come from. That was just the experience that I had, and that would be my recommendation for anyone that's considering doing this bootcamp.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good insight. So I'm going to poke a couple of holes, and please don't take it personally on the bootcamp, because I think this coding bootcamp, first of all, the price is around like $1,500 or so. Is that
17, very cheap.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
17.
So it's under 2,000. A lot of coding bootcamps are around 15 to 20,000. And I think that context is important, because it sounds like for under $2,000, it put you like halfway of where you needed to be, or maybe a little bit over that, and you had to supplement just a little bit there. And so that's okay if that's what this coding bootcamp delivers, because ultimately the main thing a coding bootcamp should teach you is how to teach yourself and how to continue growing. If you have that skill down, you're going to be really well off. But one thing I think people need to realize is there are coding boot camps where you can get a job, weeks after the coding boot camp, because you know everything you need to know. And there are coding boot camps where you're going to need to supplement. And I might have preferred something like this. It would have been much cheaper for me, because I supplemented for a year and a half before I went to coding boot camp. So this might have been actually a pretty good fit for me. But it sounds like if it's front end focused, it kind of leaves a hole in your JavaScript fundamentals and your CSS fundamentals, because both have a depth to them, and both you could spend several months. I mean, JavaScript especially could spend so many months just like really solidifying your fundamentals, because even coding boot camps that are full-time, 3 months straight that just focus on nothing but JavaScript. Some of them will, like when they would come to because I host a meetup with about a little over 1,000 members now, and we kind of just help people and help supplement their knowledge and help get them on the right path. And they don't know JavaScript fundamentals. When they come out of like a 3-month coding bootcamp that focuses on nothing but JavaScript. So it's not a slight to Nucamp for having that gap, especially for a $1,700 tuition. But it's important that people realize it before they go in and kind of come up with a plan. And it sounds like what you all are recommending is focus on the fundamentals first before you go in, and it's really going to kind of solidify in the coding bootcamp. Or are you saying let the coding bootcamp teach you the fundamentals and solidify them afterwards? Which would you lean towards?
I think it depends. Oh, go ahead, Blaine, because
I'd say learn them first, because they throw some pretty advanced stuff at you really quick. They don't wait till you're ready.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I would definitely say it's preferred that you learn it first, but it's not required. So maybe you have you're being time sensitive and you just want to start. Go ahead and start, but you can't get around it. So if you need to learn it in parallel or, learn it after, just know that you're going to have to learn it. So I know some people, they can learn things really fast. My learning style, I have to go slow, do lots of examples, deep dive, get it, and then move on. Some people can just learn it quickly and just keep going. So I don't want people to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do all this supplementing. But I would say, I would suggest you supplement beforehand, but either way, you're going to need to supplement. There's no way around that unless you already know the concepts and the fundamentals of JavaScript.
Okay. I think that's really useful context, and I'm glad we dove into that a little bit. What do you think of the instructors?
I
had some good, some bad.
What was your favorite thing about the instructors that made them good?
On the workshops, they went into pretty good detail about the content.
Okay. What about the bad ones? Oh, no.
Like on the back end, sorry.
My bad. Go on.
Yeah. So on the back end, the first day of the back end, I was already asking the instructor on how to tie the client side and the server together. And he already went ahead and just threw everything out. He planned out a time for me to meet with him, and he told me everything. And I was like, wow, now it all makes sense, how it all works together. I don't know, it was just really good with that specific teacher.
Yeah, and that's a really hard concept to learn. A lot of people have trouble bridging that gap or that transition from front end to back end or back end to front end. So I was reading through some of the reviews, and one of them that seemed to come up a few times was the instructors didn't respond in a timely manner. Do you feel like you had access?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Oh really?
I would ask a question 2 weeks later, sometimes earlier, but there was one time where it was 2 weeks later. The instructor was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I got caught up with something. Sorry, I'm just not getting back to you." I'm like, "Well, dang, I'm a little 2 workshops behind now."
That wasn't so. My experience was different. My instructors were very responsive. So if you get to communicate with them through Slack or through the Nucamp learning module. So definitely same day or next day. That was even rare. But yeah, if I had a question, they would get back to me quickly, especially through Slack. I appreciated that. And also one of my instructors, he really stood out because I can tell he has a heart to teach. And so, for example, he would host workshops that he did not have to host at Whole Foods. So this is extra help where he will say, okay, I'm going to be at Whole Foods, come out to this cafe and I can help you guys. So that really impressed me because it just showed that he's willing to go above and beyond to help the students. And I saw that. I would say that all of my instructors, they really had a heart to teach and to help the students become good developers, and they were knowledgeable. So that was the experience I had with instructors.
Interesting.
I had a pretty good experience with instructors as well. One thing about Nucamp that's kind of cool is each module, like for Bootstrap, you had one instructor, and then React, a new instructor, and then React Native, a new instructor, so on and so forth. So they were always rotating that out. So if there was a personality conflict or you just didn't feel like you're getting enough attention by the next module, you would have a new one. So it wasn't so bad. I was always getting a response within 1 to 3 days, worst case, if they were like on vacation or, something like that. They were very responsive to me. One of the instructors for one of the modules wasn't, some other students said this, he wasn't real communicative. He just wanted to teach the material, move on. But all the other instructors were really awesome. And during the last course, the back end, I actually had a lot of problems. We were using Android Studio, and all the technologies we learned are really cutting edge, but Android Studio was terrible. And they even said in one of the videos, you're going to get all kinds of goofy errors here. You'll probably have to close, restart. I could not get that to work on my mobile phone or computer properly. And I kept getting this network request failed error. And I worked with the instructor that happened like the second week. And so we spent the second week to the fourth week trying to work that out. He wasn't able to work that out. I wasn't able to work that out. We were searching on our own time. He was working with me all the time. He contacted other Nucamp instructors. Nobody could figure it out. So they actually let me retake that course free of charge. So it ended up being 6 months for me. And then I had the same instructor. And it was some kind of bug in my code. And Android Studio is just so temperamental that, one little thing and it just doesn't work properly. So I had a great experience with the instructors. The only one, and it was good guides too, but just a little uncommunicative on some stuff, it felt like. So that was my experience.
Okay. Instructors definitely make or break a coding boot camp. And you're always going to have instructors that you don't really, sometimes you just don't really vibe well with them, or like the way they teach doesn't resonate well with you. And I like that they do rotate instructors out.
Yeah.
Do they have a feedback system for instructors where you didn't have a good experience?
Yes, they did. Yeah. At the end of each week, I believe.
Yeah. Each week, yeah.
It was about the week content and then the instructor, how well they did.
Yep.
Yeah, at the end of each week, you'd say, how well did you understand the topic and how well did the instructor do? And they'd do that review every single week.
And you can have specific comments as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. That's definitely good to know. Did you do any sort of pair programming? You could if you wanted to. Like you could work, your portfolio would be yours, and then you could do projects with other people if you wanted to. I ended up doing stuff on my own free time. I'd meet with other students at the library to work things out. So every workshop too, you'd always pair up with somebody, and then you do the code, and then they rotate you around each workshop. And then during the week, of course, unless you're doing it on your own to work with somebody else, I typically was doing it by myself. Okay, interesting. How many projects did you work on that you could actually put on your portfolio by the end of it?
So you have the main Nucamp site that you create from the ground up that all the modules are directed towards, and then you have your portfolio, and then they suggest it's optional. You can do 1 or 2 projects. So I just did not have a time enough to do everything in this and work at the same time and do everything. So I only had the portfolio and the Nucamp site and just a little side work on some projects. So for me, there's only 2.
Okay. With your portfolio being one of them.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Crystal, Blaine, is that the same for you?
Well, I did 4 projects, but it was the same project, just used with different languages. Like I did a Bootstrap version, React version, a React Native version, and then like the full stack with Express and Node.
Okay. I'm just curious, Blaine, are you working on any side projects right now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was just curious. Okay. That sounds interesting. I'm a little worried about you not having at least like 3 projects to put on your portfolio. I get where that is going to require a little extra time as well. But with the part-time program, if you're doing it full time, you do kind of have that option. I think like a really good thing, if you have the available time, is to work on your own project as to solidify your own concepts, because in a project that solves your own problem, because a lot of projects go to the graveyard. People feel like they're not good enough, and that's a whole other conversation entirely. But if you work on your own project, there are higher chances that you're going to put it on your portfolio. You're going to be proud of it. You're going to add features that you want to build, that you're excited to build. And I think when you do break into the industry, if that's what you're aiming for, you're going to find that you're still going to need to do that as a software engineer to kind of keep that fire lit. You're like, if you love web development, people underestimate this, but a lot of people, you have to follow the team's conventions. You have to follow, you have to build the product and work on the product that they own. And sometimes that doesn't really allow you to flex your creativity. So even if you're in a professional software engineering position, I still think it's really, really healthy for people to work on that, passion project on the side. And that, to me, from what I've seen with most people, will keep that flame lit. I guess that's kind of just some supplemental advice. But actually, let me ask this. After you graduated, how well prepared did you feel like you were to get a professional developer position?
Felt pretty on point. Like I don't know, it kind of goes both ways. Like, I feel like I'm ready, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm ready. But I'm always told by other like senior level developers that you're never going to be ready. So it's kind of hard to pick a side there.
Why do you feel like you're not ready?
There's so much to learn, and you're not going to learn all of it. That's for sure.
That is a lot.
Learn as you go, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and that's an important thing to remember. And, everyone did mention that you do feel like supplementation is still kind of a requirement to solidify a lot of concepts. So we did talk about that. But Crystal and Jeremy, how do you two feel about it?
So if I was to go from a scale of 1 to 10, 10, you're super prepared and confident, I would say 4. And again, this is my experience, and I recognize that because I did not have coding background experience before, that it was a pretty steep learning curve for me, and just also based on the way that I learn. So if I feel like there's gaps in my knowledge, I'm not going to feel confident to start a job, even though people may say, oh, but you can learn it on the go. Yes, you can, but the type of person I am, I need to feel at least like generally confident and then be able to build on that. And I think that also goes back to having those fundamentals, which is what I'm filling in right now, just so I can feel like I have an understanding of the basis. I know how to solve problems. I know how to break down coding problems. And I'm not just going off of, oh, I remember that, let me just do this, or I don't want to just have a surface level understanding. So that's what I would say. Like I don't feel like I had a deep dive understanding of coding, and, based on what they provided, I think it was good, but it just wasn't enough for me to say I can get a developer position. But I do see that it did provide a good foundation for me to say, okay, in the future, I can get a developer position, but only after I make sure that I cement these concepts into my understanding. So that's my experience.
Okay.
I felt confident that I had received an understanding of how the ecosystem worked, and that I could navigate the future of that ecosystem, realizing that they were going to give you, this was an introduction to the world of front end and back end development, and that this is a ongoing process that you're going to have to always educate yourself. Technologies are always changing. This is an endless learning process. So I felt confident that if I had put in the time to do the 6-week self-directed course and finish off my projects, my side projects, portfolio, get everything ready exactly how I wanted it, that I would have been able to get a job. I felt very confident on that. However, because I was laid off in May and I graduated in July, my priorities changed and the ship turned for me. So I was looking to get into work quicker just so I would have something stable where I could pursue all the things that I wanted to touch up on, that I didn't understand, that I wanted to understand further, and then move into a developer job. So if I had been working, I would have just pushed on through and kept going, and hopefully would have been, in developer work by this fall or maybe coming into the new year. But because of the issues in this year and that I got laid off, I switched course. So as far as reflecting on Nucamp, it gave me a lot of confidence. I felt good about what I was doing, and that I knew how to teach myself anything that I didn't know.
Okay. I'm just processing everything right now. Does anyone know what their, I forgot what the term is, but actually, let me ask this question. How large were your cohorts? How many people were with you?
12 to 20, I think, for me.
Okay.
Mine was definitely not up to 20. 12 is like max. Maybe 8 to 12.
15.
I had 12 max, maybe. Most of the time it was like 6 or 7.
When you say most of the time, what do you mean by that?
Well, like each class would be 12, but then we would also have students that would drop out or like couldn't make it to the class, so they had to leave. They would retake the class over.
Okay, so very often you would get kind of, you switch from course to course and you would get new people and some people dropping out, some people retaking it. Okay, so you often didn't stick with your entire cohort all the way through.
Right.
Okay, that's interesting. How many people in your cohort got jobs, web developer jobs?
No one that I know of so far.
When did you graduate?
November 7th, I believe.
Okay, that's still really recent.
About a month, almost.
Okay, how about, go ahead.
So I graduated in April, and I haven't been really in contact with my cohort, which is something that I would say going back, I would have said, let's set up a Slack group or something so we can keep in contact. So I don't know how many people have a job, but I at least saw from the statistics, I don't know if you were going to ask about this, but Nucamp says they have a 78% job placement after 3 months. So that's what they say. I just haven't had any real, firsthand experience of seeing people from my cohort get jobs.
Okay. How about you?
That's the experience I had as well. And they just a couple things that are kind of interesting here. They started offering that one-on-one career coaching about midway through October. And just 3 days ago, they started to do a what they call a fair student agreement. So you can pay like $370 a month, which was what I was doing. It was a little bit less than. You can do $85 a month for 18 months, or you can even do an 8-month plan until graduation, then $85 for 18 months. So it's one thing about Nucamp is you're not getting an immersion camp, but it is very it's a very affordable camp for working professionals. I just want to throw that out there before I forgot.
Yeah, I completely agree on the affordability. It literally just knocks down the barrier of affordability. Like that's a non-issue. That'll be a non-factor if you're considering the boot camp. So if anything, it's think about everything else. Do you have the space to do it? Is this the right season? But affordability is not an issue.
Right.
That would just be my
because you don't know if you're going to get work, right?
Sorry.
Go ahead. If you know,
I was just saying, should I pay $2,000 or 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Do the math.
Spend $10,000, $20,000, and you don't get work. Where are you then? That's a lot of money.
And you don't have to quit your job, which I love. You can stay in your job and ease your way out of it. So
Yeah,
That was a big factor for me. I wanted to do a full-time boot camp, but I was like, dude, I can't really do a full-time boot camp.
right.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's something most people that go into it, they're willing to lose that $1,700 at worst case scenario. And it makes it affordable in that sense. Because that's really what affordability is. I mean, at the end of the day, this industry pays a lot, especially if you learn how to negotiate. Doesn't matter whether you join a $20,000 boot camp or a $2,000 boot camp. If you get a good paying job, it doesn't matter. Like this industry pays that much, which is really good. So I think what makes it affordable, it sounds like, are the payment plans, and also the amount of money you have to pay is so little that worst case scenario, you don't get a job. It's not a huge loss. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and you're learning cutting edge technologies, right? I mean, this is stuff that's industry standard, so you're not really losing anything. You're being introduced to stuff that is going to be used everywhere, so you don't have to worry about it. If you still have to learn more afterwards, as long as you know that beforehand, that you might not immediately get out and get a job, as long as you go into that with that attitude at first that you may need to continue your education. This is an awesome boot camp.
Okay. This is an interesting context because I think people tend to, in previous episodes, when I would mention that you're going to have to supplement, it's not going to teach you everything that you need to know, people typically tend to shy away from diving into that conversation more. And all of you are bringing a very, very different and honestly constructive mindset of that's okay. That's why it's so cheap. And I think you have the right mindset in mind where as long as you supplement, you're going to be just fine. And you're probably going to pay a much cheaper gateway fee into the industry if you're self-driven, if you're self-motivated to supplement a little bit.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think they're teaching stuff that everything you need to know. Is just the ecosystem is so vast. There's so much stuff out there to know. Like, you read about what is a full stack developer, and they'll give you a list that you got to do, know this. And it's just a ton of stuff. And, people will say, is there anything such as a full stack developer? Or do you just know some like core technologies and you're able to, swim from there? So you are learning stuff. You can, with what they're giving you, it's enough to get a job, and especially in like a front end environment only. But, just because there's so much information technology is so huge. I mean, you just have to understand, no matter who you are, that it's just ongoing learning, It'll always be.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about the job assistance after the program? You mentioned that they came out with a new coaching program. Is that pretty much the extent of it?
Well, they have, like I said before, they have a 6-week self-directed course, which was all you had before. And then you can reach out to the instructors, reach out to their staff. You're always going to be an alumni. You can communicate any issues you have. But now they actually have somebody that you can work with if you have questions, which I had 1,000,001 questions. I just, I didn't know what to do. So, but now that issue is covered. So I have not investigated that a lot, but it looks like they have full job support now.
Kind of. I actually got a career planning coach, and I met with him, which my experience was okay. It wasn't bad. He basically just reviewed my resume and my portfolio, kind of gave me feedback on what to change, what he really liked, what he didn't like. But I did have a friend that went to the same boot camp as me, and his career planning coach would not even review his portfolio because of some terms of Nucamp. So I don't know if that was like really a thing. And my career planning coach is just like, all right, yeah, I'll do it, even though I'm not supposed to, or what? Like what the deal was with that. But I found that pretty odd.
That's interesting. Okay. So they review your resume, maybe not your portfolio, but you are
LinkedIn profile and resume.
LinkedIn profile and resume. Do you, Do they offer any sort of like job fairs situation, or do they maybe even like in a Slack channel post a job posting where they have alumni at that? They do.
They have like a job search Slack channel, which is, they did post jobs in, but I did notice one job posting. It was like with C#. And I was like, wait a second, this is like a JavaScript boot camp. And you're posting something about a different language that I have no idea how to write. Which, I mean, you never know. Someone in the boot camp might have the knowledge. So I'm not saying that was a bad thing. It just kind of caught my eye.
Okay. All right. I'm just processing it.
No worries.
That, so career coaching in job assistance after a coding boot camp, I've seen it done very badly in many, many coding boot camps, including the one I went to, where I saw career coaches get replaced. I heard, because I would actually coach people. Full Stack Academy had this program where alumni could reach out, or they would set up like a mentorship session. This was completely Full Stack's thing. And a lot of the feedback that I got was the problems with the career coaches. They would give inconsistent advice, or they'd be overworked, or they wouldn't stay there long. So the loyalty and kind of like the motivation to help people that actually came from that program, it could lower a little bit because they might have been brand new, or they might have been experiencing just kind of a bad work environment. That's the feedback that I got. Career coaching after coding bootcamp is a really hard thing, and there's a lot of turnover from what I've learned, which is really interesting. I don't know if it's the industry or not. So it's good to hear with such a cheap coding bootcamp that you get that kind of support. And with that said, it sounds like a more positive experience. It doesn't sound like they offer a lot, but it does sound like a pretty positive experience, and I'm impressed that they actually offer the one-on-one coaching. That's huge for such a cheap coding boot camp. So it's kind of just what I'm...
The downside I could say about that is you could only book like a 30-minute time frame. Anytime you wanted to like meet with them, you could only do 30 minutes, no longer. Which, I mean, 30 minutes, you can talk about a lot of stuff in 30 minutes, but, you know, sometimes I could go hours.
You know what I
found? Can you book more than one? Like, do you only get one session with them, or can you book like one a week, or how's that work? I never got
curious about that. I was actually gonna email him tonight and ask him if I could do that, because 30 minutes, man.
Yeah, that's not very much.
You know what I found? Because I've been experimenting with different times with coaching. And I stuck to an hour because I think that's the most effective time. Effective for them and me. But 30 minutes, when I give someone 30 minutes, I found that they prepare more. They actually have the questions ready. And we dive into the meat of things. It's less time spent towards like getting to know them and diving into more soft skill stuff. But I do find that people come more prepared with 30 minutes than an hour. And so we can really like dive deep quickly within that 30 minutes and give them practical information. It's less of a mentorship session and more of a consulting session, but it pretty much gets them to ask all of their questions without kind of tiptoeing around certain things. And it's an interesting strategy offering 30 minutes. I bet it's because they don't have the available time. It sounds like it's something new.
Yeah.
Capacity wise.
Yeah.
Like my coach, he said that he was a full-time Angular developer, and I was like, oh, wow. And you do this on the side? That's crazy.
That is
pretty
interesting.
Cool if you ask me, but yeah.
A full-time Angular developer.
Yeah.
Aren't there all their instructors like working professionals as well who are doing this in their spare time? I mean, they don't have, except for their staff out in like Washington. I think most everybody involved in the program is doing this in their free time. This is not their full-time job.
Yeah, so they definitely like have a full-time coding job.
Yeah, exactly.
Like my React. Sorry.
I think that that's a. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Blaine.
No, it's so hard to hear when someone talks. No, you go ahead. It's fine.
Okay, I was going to say, I think that that's value that Nucamp offers with having the instructors be part-time and this not being their full-time work, because they have that real world experience in parallel. And then also the fact that they're doing the boot camp, it means that they want to be there. They're not doing it for a paycheck. I wouldn't think so. Right. I would think that they're doing it because they actually want to help and they have a heart to teach, and, they just happen to get paid for it because, they could just be doing their developer job and getting paid. So it just seems like having that strategy is helpful. And it really helps to bring in good quality instructors that want to be there and have real world experience.
I will say one thing about being a developer that I've learned is you learn a lot more when you are trying to teach someone else. It helps you grasp a bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. You are absolutely right. I think that's really interesting. All the instructors are full-time developers and they teach in their spare time. So I have a mentor at one of my meetups. He does a fantastic job. His name is Ben. I depend on him for a lot. A lot of people at my meetup really appreciate the advice he gives, but everything he does is outside of his full-time job. And he even teaches for Full Stack Academy as a part-time instructor, I think. But that's a really interesting idea, and you're absolutely right. For someone to do that, I know actually, he just got a new position, so maybe this isn't super accurate, but I have a really good idea of how much money he makes, and he doesn't need to work on the side. He really doesn't. And so that's a really good point. Most developers don't. That is our industry. And if you're working on the side, you are interested in helping others. And
you want to, right?
Yeah, that's a really neat idea. I actually would never have even thought to ask this, so I'm glad all of you brought this up. That's a really interesting thing about the instructors. And that a lot of good coding boot camps, they a common reason they lose good instructors are because the instructors they don't get to code. They don't get to be a developer. And it's a really hard thing attracting instructors and convincing them to quit kind of what they were passionate about to teach, because you really don't get to code. You don't get to work on the software.
Interesting point.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good middle ground.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand why they might not respond right away.
Yep.
Given their situation. And I think that gives light to that.
Yeah, that's a good point you mentioned.
One thing, if I could insert about is job searching. It seems to me with programming, it is like swimming with the sharks. It is like, they expect you to live a starving artist lifestyle with starving artist pay. I mean, maybe once you get the job and you're in, it's just like heaven. But it just seems really hard getting there. You have to be like a starving artist, and then you have to realize you're swimming with sharks. There's not always supportive people out there. You're going to have to fight for everything. And that's one thing. And I was reading, the guy who created the Agile Manifesto, Robert Martin, he has a book, and he was talking about in his book, Clean Coder. I think that's the one book. I read one or two books by the guy, but he's saying, okay, be prepared to be on a job. And if you mess up, you do something, you create a bug or something, that you reimburse the company $10,000. So yeah, it's like, you are, a servant or something. It's just, it seems to me it's a very tough atmosphere programming, getting into the programming field. Wow. Maybe it's my perception, I don't know, but then there's a lot of support to get there. But even when you're in that support system, it seems like a real struggle until once you're in, you have some work experience, and then you can move from there. And I hear, people talk about imposter syndrome, once they're actually coding and stuff. And it just seems like programming is so exciting. It is such a fun field. You get to be creative. You get paid, eventually, hopefully you get paid well. It's such a big industry, but at the same time, it's a very stressful industry. So, I mean, that's just one of the things that has intimidated me a little bit as far as job searching. So I don't know if it's real. Maybe it's just my perception, but that's something that's been in my mind.
So,
Definitely stressful.
okay, I would love to dive into this for a few minutes and touch on some of those points. It is really brutal breaking into the industry. It is extremely competitive. It's an industry where you don't need a degree. Even though some people might tell you you need it, you absolutely do not need a computer science degree. You don't even need to go to college. I know developers that have gotten good developer positions and work at Google that didn't even graduate high school. So with that said, it shows you what companies really care about. And it's what you can do. It's the type of person you are, how well you fit into the culture of the company, and what you can do. So one thing that's important to remember is because almost anyone that can code can get a position as a developer, and especially with so many coding boot camps popping up, you have a very, very high saturation in entry-level market for becoming a developer.
Yeah.
It's extremely competitive. And that's why I think it's important to recognize that, because I can tell you for certain, 90% of the people that come to my meetup, they're not going to get a developer position. They're going to give up. And one thing that I stress, and this is something that I really stress, is it's competitive. It's not you. It's you just haven't become the person that you need to be yet to be able to handle this environment, to be able to handle this industry and produce the results. Just not yet. And the only reason you're not going to become a developer is if you give up. Those are the only people that will not become developers. 90% give up because it's so competitive. And when you realize that, when I really emphasize that, I hope it gives people confidence that to have a little patience, and maybe you need to build habits, or even like a little bit more of a long-term plan of getting that position. But I want people to realize this so they can be more realistic about those expectations, because it's this difference in expectations of what they currently are with people and what they should be to actually get the position, where people fall off and they get discouraged and they blame themselves. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. And all these self-defeating thoughts. So like a lot of it really is just encouraging people to be more patient, encouraging people to have a more long-term plan, encouraging people to build good, healthy habits where you can take constructive criticism constructively and not personally. And it's building your soft skills. It's building your confidence, and going into, and this is the most important thing, going into a situation that is scary, that is uncomfortable. And instead of backing away from it, you go forward. You experience that situation and you do it over and over and over. You fail interviews until you get that position. And when you can develop the mindset to not be afraid of that anymore, of experiencing those uncomfortable situations, first of all, that's the type of person that's going to become a developer, but that's also a type of person that can do so much more than become a developer. And that's such an important habit to build when you're breaking into any industry. But that is the most successful trait that I've seen that pushes people to finally get that position. So it's a really important thing to recognize that. Now, there was a second portion, Jeremy, of what you said. When you are a developer, if you create a bug, you have this perception that it's so high stressful that if you screw up, you owe the company $10,000. And I could promise you that is not true at all for 99% of companies. When you get into a position, it is so hard to hire a good developer and keep them that companies aren't looking to replace you. It is completely the opposite. It's really hard to break in, but once you're finally in the industry, there is a huge shortage of competent developers. And a competent developer makes bugs. I created several bugs throughout my career. I promise you, I created so many bugs. And the way that the companies handled it, it's interesting because I had that fear too, especially when I got my first position. I'm like, I can't believe they hired me. They hired the wrong person. I'm going to screw up. And that's the mindset I had. And I was scared. And when I did, I think my manager realized that I was a little nervous that I did create a bug. And he just he could care less about the bug that I created. He's like, okay, we're going to put it in the next sprint. You're going to fix that. And that's it. And he didn't allow the conversation to go on. He didn't allow me to apologize or anything like that. That was part of the process. That's part of the agile process. And it's built into that. And so I want to really emphasize, once you're in the industry, they want to keep you. They care about you, and they don't care if you make a mistake. You're human. And that's maybe one thing that, if you have that worry, Jeremy, I'm sure other people have that worry. Even with contract work, you are going to create bugs and then you're going to fix them. You are not a developer if you don't create bugs, in my opinion. I've never met a developer that doesn't create bugs. So I really want to emphasize that.
I was worried about the high stress of it, but it's just, even like Uncle Bob, that's what everybody calls the guy, the creator, one of the creators of the agile methodology. When he's saying, this huge personality in the software industry is saying, well, expect to reimburse a company for a mistake. It's like, I don't know. I thought maybe he's not, like, maybe he's being facetious or something, or just joking around, but I don't know. It's just, my perception is it's hard to get in, like you're saying. And then once you're in, it can be super stressful. So, I don't know, but I'm not working in that industry yet. So I don't know.
So I'm going to go as far as demonetizing my own video. That's a load of bullshit. He shouldn't be saying that. He is completely wrong. Don't listen to that specific aspect of what he's teaching. He is full of shit. Right. That I have never met a developer that would ever agree with that. Now, you should care about the work. You should care that you're not going to make the same bug twice. You're not going to make the same mistake twice. That's the extent of it. So I'm actually glad you said that. That's really important. And when you do get these really big figures that talk about this in a very facetious way, and they have a negative perspective on this, I think it's important to call them out. And because it does scare people. Now, it is a very stressful environment. Typically not because, let's see, a couple of things that I see making it stressful are you're surrounded by brilliant people. It takes a lot of persistence and knowledge to get into this industry, and you're surrounded by brilliant people. And what you're going to realize is a lot of senior developers have become senior developers, and they've been promoted to that because they're willing to help out a lot of junior developers. I mean, that is a responsibility of a senior developer, and that's a controversial topic, but I do think it is a responsibility. But you're going to find that a lot of companies, they're not scary people. They want to help you out. They want to see you grow, and they definitely know what it's like to be in your position because they were there one day. Another thing that can be stressful is it's very draining, especially when you start, to see this giant code base and be intimidated. A lot of people are intimidated by it because they aren't picking it up as fast as they think they should. And what usually creates this stress is, I want to be a good developer. I want to contribute. I want to provide value to the company, just like all these other senior developers that have been here for 5 years too. And people have this perception that I think hurts them. It's self-destructive. And I think it's really important to realize that you actually have to put your foot down. If you are picking up too many issues because you feel like you're not moving fast enough and you want to move faster and show that you're a good developer, that's a mistake. You're shooting yourself in the foot. And what a good manager wants you to do is say, I can't do that just yet. This is a new library. I haven't even looked into it. I got to research this library. I don't even know how long it's going to take, but I can't, I don't think it's safe for me to pick up these extra issues. And you're going to have some project management and teams that will kind of push more on you. And as a developer, it's a really important skill to say, I cannot do this. This is what I can do in this 2-week sprint or this 1-week sprint. And that skill and being able to determine what you can and can't do, that comes with time. And that's where junior developers kind of start moving into mid-range roles, and they start becoming more resourceful, and they start just gaining more confidence in what they can and cannot do, and coming up with a path to help themselves grow so that they can slowly, over time, contribute more to the code base at a faster pace. So it can be a stressful environment. That stress always is because of the developer's perspective. Now, you might have a few bad eggs, a few bad companies that just don't treat you well, and they will overwork you. But, that's an entirely different conversation to deal with that and avoid companies like that. But yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, Jeremy. This is a really good concern. Right. Okay, let's see. How much time do we have? I just want to make sure we don't go over. Okay. So 2 more final questions. What constructive criticism would you give for this coding bootcamp? What could they do better?
So for me, I would say the portfolio project, it was optional, which I understand because, some people may not like to do it or feel like they have to. But I think that's one of those things that if I was to give criticism, it would say, make that required, just like let it be a part of the curriculum that, so that way, that coming into the program at the end of it, you're going to have a project. And I think that provides some confidence to the student to know that it's built in and it's not just an add-on of, okay, if you want to, you can work on this. Because honestly, just even hearing the word optional, it's almost like, oh, everything else you said after that, I'm not doing it. I'm just focusing on what I need to do. So I think that can be a mindset. And I didn't do the portfolio project. I started working on a project with another student, but then we ended up not finishing it. And I just felt like, man, I wish I would have dived in more into this. And then another thing too, concerning the portfolio project, I think that it would have been nice for them to have a list of options of projects. So let people choose their own if they have an idea, but then say, okay, these are some examples. So that way they already have examples that are vetted out to say like, these are examples which are commensurate with your experience. Because I think a big hurdle for me was that I don't even know what idea to think of. I mean, there's so many. That was a big hurdle for me because I felt like even coming up with an idea, I'm like, I don't even know. Okay, now is this related to React or Bootstrap? Or it was just so hard for me, and just to a point where I'm like, I don't even have the drive to do this. I just want to focus on the curriculum. So I think that making it required to a certain extent where it's not overbearing, but then giving people the option to choose their own project, but then also saying like, these are some projects that we came up with that you can choose and you can work with a group. And that by the end of the day, once you do this project, you would have attained a certain amount of skills. So that way you can just knock down that hurdle of having the mental energy to think of a project. So that would be my big thing with the portfolio project.
Okay.
I'd say for the boot camp to go into more detail on version control. Like we went over Git, but it was barely anything. Like they taught you how to stage changes, how to commit them, and how to push them. That was basically it. But like there's creating branches and merging branches and stuff like that. There's a lot to, and being a developer, like you kind of have to know version control. Unless if you don't, you're going to mess some things up.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that it was optional.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Blaine. So I would add on that to mine. Make the portfolio project required as well as Git. It shouldn't be optional because that's a skill you need to know.
Well, how did you work as a group on a project? Like, how did that work out?
So it was very low level. So we did use Git to upload our changes. However, that was a struggle for some because not everyone was up to speed on it. And because it wasn't required, some people didn't use it. But, for me, I wanted to do it because I knew it was important and I just wanted to learn it. But because it wasn't like a level playing field of everyone is learning this, it's just kind of like it was another hurdle for us working on that project, which I think could have been made easier if it was part of the curriculum.
Yeah, I don't think they should have said it was optional. I was familiar with GitHub before. I was automatically saving everything to GitHub just to get in that habit. But I don't think they should have said that it was optional. They should just reinforce that habit that you're saving all your changes every time you're doing a module. So I suppose they were just trying to make it easier so people could, get an idea of how this world works. but I don't think that should have been something optional. I think that I would say that would be a good observation as well. For me, the big observation is just that at the end of the camp, you're doing these camps, you look through all the choices. Do you want to like quit your job, fully immerse yourself? Do you want to do some type of part-time thing? You look at all the options, but what are you trying to do this for? You're trying to do this to get a job. So, just really focusing on getting people placed and how they can do that time after time in, a challenging industry. I think that would be my constructive criticism for Nucamp, is just having, you're going to work, you're going to go there, they're going to support you after, and they're going to show you how to get a job. It may take a while, but you're going to get a job eventually, and they'll show you how to do that. And I think that's the huge leap there. You start to know how front end, back end development works, but how do you translate that into getting a salary?
Right.
Okay.
But every schooling, I think, fails. They teach you how to do it, but they don't teach you how to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, we could argue that's a mistake that even high school makes in most areas. Okay. All right, that's really good constructive feedback. I think that was a good thing to end with. But as far as the Coding Bootcamp, I really appreciate your reviews. I appreciate your perspective. This is super helpful. We dove into some tangents for sure, but I think this is going to be a really good episode. So before we end this, what is like one final piece of advice we can give aspiring developers that are trying to get a position?
I would say start off, like, this is going to sound pretty iffy, but start off with YouTube. If you don't know if web development is for you, start off with YouTube. Just watch a couple YouTube videos, learn what HTML and CSS is, figure out if you like it. If you like it and you think you can actually be inspired to learn more, go for the bootcamp.
Okay. I think that's pretty good advice. All right.
And I would add on to that. So yeah, there's free resources with YouTube and also free code camp as well. But I found that Udemy, so it's spelled udemy.com, they have excellent courses for like $10. Yep. And even right now, I'm taking a class that was $10, and I'm learning JavaScript, and it's like deep dive. It's I can't even believe that I only spent $10 for this. This is definitely worth way more. So yeah, I would definitely say start with the free resources, but then if you want to go deeper, maybe go on Udemy and start learning there. And then, you can venture onto a boot camp, but that way you can learn some fundamentals. So I would also add that and just emphasize that you need to know fundamentals of JavaScript if that's the language you want to learn. You can't go around it. Make sure that you practice and you understand the concept before you move on. And then I would say do a portfolio project. That was something I didn't do, but looking back, I would have definitely done that just to make sure that you're applying the skills that you're learning and something that you enjoy as well. So so that way that it's something that you're excited about and you're driven to do. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay. That sounds good. Sorry, did you have something to say, Jeremy? I didn't want to cut you.
My suggestion is this is an introduction to the world of programming. Aren't learning everything. You're not learning every language. There's no way you're going to be able to learn every technology out there. You're learning how to navigate this ecosystem. You're being introduced to this world. But realize this is an ongoing process once you're done. You're always going to have to get in this habit of educating yourself and learning new technologies, learning how things work. Take that learner's mind and realize that's a lifelong thing. There's always going to be new stuff to learn, and you're just going to have to get in that mindset that, you just don't learn this 5-month thing and then stop. This is now part of your lifestyle, and you just have to have an attitude that is of lifelong learning.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it. All right, that's it. Let's do our outros. Crystal, if people wanted to reach out to you, where could they reach you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can just search my name, Crystal Adelie, and I'm on there.
Sounds good. Actually, I would ask this. Usually I put people's LinkedIn in the notes. Like I'll make a LinkedIn post. I think all of you are added on LinkedIn for me. I'll tag you so you'll know when the podcast episode is actually released. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
That's
Fine
also
with me.
fine with that.
Great.
Okay, perfect. And for me, if you want to reach me, I think for a while I'm going to keep up this podcast hosting at DonTheDeveloper.tv. You can see all my episodes. I'm actually going to start hopefully building out a custom website for that soon. But keep giving me feedback. I really appreciate it. It's super helpful. The feedback that you give me every single day, it's the reason why I do Coding Bootcamp episodes. And it's the reason why I actually just did a Google podcast episode and I invited CTOs on. And so if you want to see different content, let me know. If you like the content you're seeing, let me know. But definitely like it, subscribe, because we are a small podcast. We are trying to grow. Please share it if you can. And you'll see me next week, I'm sure. How about you, Blaine?
You can email me at blaine.young3553@gmail.com.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My contact information is there. I'd prefer to communicate through LinkedIn, but my email is there if you need to contact me there as well.
All right, perfect. Well, again, everyone that's watching, thank you so much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Leave feedback. Crystal, Blaine, Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Don. This was great. I really had a great time.